In 1970, I started out as a master's student at Illinois State University. And Bragg was a faculty member. He's an associate professor, I think, at the time. And he was really weird. He was in charge of the basic communication course. And I was a graduate assistant teaching one of the small group sections of that course. And I also was the graduate student representative to faculty meetings. And at that time, Illinois State was trying to get a doctoral program in communication. And in the faculty meetings, which consisted of a lot of the old traditional kinds of speech people, plus a lot of the new Turks, who were more communication, social science oriented, Brad was on this group, and when we started talking about this doctoral program, he said, it has nothing to do with computers, it has nothing to do with communication. And it's like, what? What are you thinking? And so he was really strange to me. And in December, or just January or something, went on a debate tournament. I was a debate assistant as well as being a graduate assistant in this course. We went to William and Mary for a debate tournament, and some of the people in this room were there. And Bob Moyer was one of the assistant coaches at the time, and we played a lot of bridge between debates. And I should probably turn this down. Liam, you're not doing your job. And so we played a lot of bridge. And on the way back, we also stopped in Washington, D.C. and saw a friend of mine and played some more bridge most of the night. And then came home, and later I was walking down the hall, stopped by Bob's office, and he said, we should really get together and play bridge. And he and his wife both played bridge. And it was like, we need a fourth. Brad happened by. He says, Brad, you play bridge, don't you? And so the four of us got together and started playing bridge. And so for several weeks, we would play bridge at least once a week, have dinner, and go back and forth. And then he started asking me out in other ways, and I was willing to go at that point in time. I mean, our romance was really a pretty quick one, because that was probably January, February. It was probably March before we started doing any dating. And I went to a convention in Phoenix that year, and when I came back, he asked me to marry him. And it's like, this is really fast.
You have to check with your father.
Yes, I theoretically had to check with my father, but my father had always taught me to be brutally honest. So I write him and I say, I want to marry this guy. He's Catholic. We were Lutheran. He was married, he's divorced, and he has a child. And he's 13 years older. No, I said he was 10 years older. He's really 13, but I didn't dare say 13. And so we married in September. So it was pretty fast. And when we went home to my house to get ready to get married, the minister told me that he was not going to be in the wedding. And I had decided that no matter what, if he wasn't in the wedding, it was his choice. It was not my choice. And so I was going to do everything possible to make it possible for him to be there. And Wendy was along, and Wendy was going to be in the wedding party. My sister was also in the wedding party. And And Brad, as a consolation, decided to take Wendy out of the wedding party. And she ended up having to sit next to my father, who she was scared to death of. She was only 8 at the time. And so it was just Kathy and I, and Jim McCroskey, who's been mentioned before, and Brad, for this wedding. That was a small wedding. My dad decided he may stay up with me until 3 o'clock in the morning the day we were getting married to try to talk me out of it. And he had a Mercury Cougar in the garage, and I'd always wanted a Cougar. And he showed it to me. And it was like, you can have this. Or you could get married. And the morning of the wedding rehearsal, he made us have breakfast together for the last time as a family. Really dramatic. So we were an hour late for the wedding rehearsal.
Big breakfast.
Right. But he was there for the wedding. And Wendy did get to play a role. Not exactly the role we had planned for her, but we got through the ceremony. It was, you may kiss the bride, this sort of thing. And Wendy runs up from the audience. Remember, she's sitting next to my dad. And she runs up from the audience with this red rose and hands it to me. Which was his little secret with her, to let her be a part of it in spite of the other things that were going on. So it's so typical of Brad. He finds solutions in the most precarious of situations. So who'd like to go next? I know there's several of you there. Okay, Barbara's gonna go. And then Bob.
Hi, I'm Barbara. Brad was my mentor, and I am what I am now because of Brad and Velma. My favorite Brad story is, we used to do things, it was a very small department at Wilson Learning. There was just like 4 or 5, 6 of us, and we used to do social things together as well. We'd exchange gifts at Christmas. One Christmas, he gave teas to everybody. I was a tea drinker, and they were supposed to represent our personality. He gave me a box of Morning Thunder. Little hint, yes. But one time we went to the Walker because we wanted to see the Wax Museum. This was in 3D, and it was going to be so cool and all that. And before the feature film, they had a Three Stooges short, which really used much more of the 3D technique than Wax Museum did. Wax Museum, had the yo-yo at the beginning, and that was about it. So the rest of the evening, Brad, we went out to dinner, or we did something afterwards, I don't remember what, but he wore the 3D glasses the rest of the evening. Now Brad, always the hair up, always untucked, right? And these 3D glasses on. And he is the most intelligent person I have ever met. And this guy, you can see the wheels turning. And every now and then he'd do something from the Three Stooges movies. He'd take out his pen and go, This was Brad. And the other thing about Brad, for his birthday, we would give him a big jar of Red Hots, because you can't beat those Red Hots, right? So you'd come back to our little area, and you'd see Red Hots all over the floor. And you would know where Brad had been. I miss you, Brad. He was great.
My name is Bob Bragg. I worked at Wilson Learning, so I started about 1975, and I brought a concept there that they hadn't used before, and that was to take the programs and sell them to smaller companies, not the Fortune 500, but the companies mostly employees of 1,000 or less employees. And there was a lot of skepticism in Wilson at the time because they sold to the Fortune 500. And who were these little companies, and how did I think I'd be successful? In fact, Larry said he didn't want to do it, as did Bill Ramsey, as Larry didn't want to do it. But anyhow, without going into, the reason I mentioned that part of this it became successful both for me and for another 50 people around the United States and other parts of the world. But when I met with Brad, he got it. He understood what we were trying to do. And he was very inquisitive about it. So tell me what you do. And I tell him what we were doing because we worked directly with the clients. We did the teaching. We got to know the people who ran the company, the department heads, the people in the manufacturing floors or the service area. And when we would show up, Bob Flynn is here, was one of our instructors. We were heroes and heroines. They applauded when we came in. We brought the Wilson technology to them that close and brought it as part, we were able to have it as part of the culture. And Brad, as he's learning, he said, you know, this is what we should do. He said, you should be teaching us what to do. And he said, you know, you really got something here. And he was one of the first people who really got it, that we were doing something different, and that it was a value that they hadn't thought of before. And Brad just, in many times, on trips I got to talk with him, and he would actually come and seek me out. And again, I'm a night and day different personality. I know him for his academic work, his writings, his research, which I've done none of. I was a farmer, though. I didn't know he was a farmer. We should have talked about that. Maybe that's why we got along. But he always taught me, I said, he was always, tell me some more what you're doing. And he was so intrigued to find the writings being put to practical use. That'll stop. Thank you. Good to see you, Joe.
Hi, I'm Mary Schwalen, and I started working at Wilson Learning in 1984, I believe. I was in the product development group, and I was an instructional designer, and so I started doing a lot of...
Forward.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, that's right. I started doing a lot of custom tailorings and customization programs, a lot with counselor selling, and then also with social styles. I don't know how it happened, but I ended up on a project with Brad for General Motors of Canada. And it was a project that's so standard to what we do now in training and development, where you do some evaluation and assessment up front. You don't just go in and with a solution. And Brad was the research part of that, and then I was part of the design. And there was someone else on the team, I don't remember who it was. But we were in Toronto. I'd never been to Toronto before, and it was a long day in meetings. And so we were out, I think we were out looking for dinner or something. And in Toronto, the nightlife goes on for a long time. So I remember we were driving up and down these streets, and somehow we ended up in a department store. He said, you have to go and buy a dress. You need to buy something here, something that you're gonna remember Toronto for. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I really hadn't been intending to buy anything. So I ended up trying all these dresses on, and Brad looking at them and saying, nope, not that one, not that one, this one. I totally forgotten about this story until we started telling stories. And it was kind of a tunic kind of dress, like a long skirt and then a tunic over part, and more European than American, you know, being from Toronto. So I didn't really see myself in it, but I said, okay, I'll get the dress because I want to get out of the store. So I did that, and it turned out to be one of my favorite dresses, actually. And it got me into the habit of every time I went somewhere to a new city, what could I find that I could bring back as a remembrance that would be something meaningful, not just kitschy stuff. So that was one of my Brad stories. The other one was 1986. One of our colleagues, Jim Kirk, died that January. We found out just before Christmas that he had cancer and that it was not looking as like a curable cancer at all. And some of us had gone to Santa Fe to the ranch, to Larry's ranch, and we'd done all kinds of amazing, energetic, and new agey kinds of things. And I came back from that trip, and I really did have a different perspective on the world. I'd slept with rocks. I'd done some amazing things. Been on this vision hike. practically fainted from the heat and, and dehydration. But I came back and I'd been dating this fellow in San Diego, and I've been debating whether I should move to San Diego because he really wanted me to move to San Diego, and I'm like, I'm not leaving my job at Wilson Learning or my friends in Minneapolis. There is no way. But there was something about how coming back and finding out that Jim was, I think he passed at the end of January, the third week of January or so, and it all happened so fast, and it came to me that if I didn't go and try this, I would never know. And so I did move, and we broke up about 6 months later, this man and I, and Brad had, after I moved, he found me some contract work. So I was working with Cal and Pam at San Jose State. So he had, to get me started as a contractor, he'd given me a small project with them. So I was doing some data analysis and putting some information together for them. And Brad came out and we had a meeting. And I was in this mopey state where I think I should move back to Minneapolis. I miss all my friends, and I don't know if I can do this. And he said, okay, suck it up here. He said, we're gonna find you something that's gonna help you with this. So somehow he marched into the store and he found a stuffed panda bear. And he named it Rock. And he put Rock in my arms and he said, you're going back to San Diego and you're gonna survive this. He said, you don't need to come back until you're sure that that's the right thing for you. And I'm still in San Diego. But I definitely miss my Wilson learning community here. And I'm very fond of Brad.
Where's Rob? Yeah, where's Rob?
Hello everyone, I'm Paul Habegger, and when Velma hired me in 1981, just a little kid and still at Dartmouth College, that was such a momentous turning point in my life that I didn't realize. In fact, I didn't know that Bob Flynn was here. If it wasn't for Bob Flynn, I wouldn't have even gone to the interview for the internship, so thank you, Bob. But the nice thing about that hire is that, unbeknownst to me, I got a 2-for-1. Brad was as much as my mentor as Velma was, and he made me feel really special. He put my arm around me, and he was, my development was going to be his job. Well, I thought I was special, but he did that to everybody, like Barbara said. But again, I'm just this young whippersnapper, don't know anything. I'm working in the bowels of the organization, crunching data and putting reports together, and he decides that there's a big Alcoa meeting with hundreds of middle-level managers, and he's going to go present the results, so he wants me to come with. I don't know how we got it approved. So I'm flying out there on the plane, and he says, now, you're going to make this presentation. I said, what? I said, yeah, you're going to make this presentation. I said, Brad, he goes, presentation's not hard. You just got to do 2 things. You got to know your material better than the audience, so you got to prepare, and then you got to deliver it with enthusiasm. So, that was sounded simple, but, it was more complex than that. He worked with me that night, he worked with me that morning, and I think I did an okay job, and I was kind of hooked. It's like, well, this is kind of fun. He allowed me to tell his stories and everything else as if they were mine, so it was a fantastic beginning. But as has already been said, he really valued recognition. Barbara Hanson and I, he bound one of our research reports. I mean, I don't think it was anything special, was it, Barbara? Just
Was me.
I mean, we did a lot of reports though, but it's still on my shelf as an example. And somebody said that you value exactly. And he obviously valued education. I was hired back full-time after I finished at Dartmouth. And I thought, oh gosh, now I have a job, I'm already married, we're set, right? No, you're gonna go get your master's degree, Paul. There's a theme here. And thanks to Velma's help, advocating with Molly Post, we got a tuition reimbursement plan, and Barbara Hanson and I probably wouldn't have our MVIs if it wasn't for that series of events. He valued education and recognition so much that when my wife graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1983, she was going to skip the graduation ceremony because she started out at Bemidji State as a Beaver, went there a few years and finished. She didn't feel, that much closeness to the U of M, but Brad wouldn't have it. You're going to have a graduation ceremony. So in the backyard of our Richfield home, we got the pomp and circumstances playing. He wore his full regalia with his hat and everything. I think he wrote her diploma on a flip chart and rolled it up and handed it to Kate, and it made her feel special. So that was just Brad all over. He was so visionary. He talked about voice recognition back then, and we looked at him like he was a ghost. And look at us now. What do we do to our phones? We talk to our phones and they know what we say. He was ahead of the game. His focus was legendary. If he was staring at his computer, you could not pry him from it. I have this image in my mind, and I'm sure others of you have it as well. Velma was ready to leave the office at the end of the day. Of course, it wasn't the end of her day. She had one bag on this shoulder. She had a huge pile of 3-ring binders and papers that she was going to work on that night. She goes down to Brad's office, okay, Brad, let's go. No response. Brad, we gotta go. No response. Brad! But the thing about those 3 Brads, it was always 3. Brad! It was never a Brad of anger. It was almost a Brad of, you silly boy, It's like, because she just knew that it's like he couldn't help it. He was just, this focus of this magnetism with this computer screen. So there was just so many warm memories I have of Brad. He did love his Broadway music. He did love his music. One of the things that he taught me that was completely foreign to me at the time is he would occasionally quote lyrics rather than sing them. Wendy, you're a far better singer than Brad was. But he would quote lyrics rather than sing them. And it was an interesting thing because you think about the words more when you do that. And so one of my favorites that he said, and I heard it playing in the background earlier today, it's still the same, and I could just vision him, right in the hallway of Wilson Learning. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory. What's the next one? A case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. Well, Brad, time's caught up to you, and it's our loss, and may the rest of us honor the time that we have remaining in his honor. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Darcy. I'm Velma's sister. I think it was in when did you get married, Velma? 71?
Did you get married?
71? Is that what you
got married.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was in 1971, or maybe it was 1972. I was traveling with a friend, and we had traveled through Canada and came down and into the United States, and we arrived in West Virginia, and we wanted to look up Velma and Brad. And as an artist type, it was kind of strange when Brad said, well, why don't you come to my statistics class? And I thought, I don't know if I want to go to this, but he's my brother-in-law, I should really go and just see what happens. So I went into the class, and everything he was saying at the beginning was just, ooh. But as the artist type, and now as a teacher myself, one thing that I did notice, and that I think I've carried from him all these years, from that experience, is that he was someone that saw his students, and he did not hesitate in any way to call forth something that he could recognize in a twinkle of an eye that someone had, or the way they held their hand. He would bring it forth and ask them a question and then give them I think it was M&Ms or something like that. He had some kind of candy, always came for a reinforcement, And there was just something, as I've got to know him over the years, there's something that I carry from my knowledge of Brad and from having known him. And that is really this awareness of the other, and to really recognize that there is something special in each and every person that you meet. And those teachable moments are constant. And I think that that's something that he really carried.
Okay, I
Jane, I think he's.
Wow, this is, I'm glad we're videoing this. Velma is about 5 years ago. I got my doctorate in 3 years. I got my master's in 1 year at Springfield. I went to Fort Hays State, which is like a boy named Sue. Nobody's ever heard of it. And I tell...
I had a son-in-law.
Thank you. If you say Fort Hays State real quickly, it sounds like Florida State. But I went to Fort Hays State. I'm from Kansas. And because of Brad, if you think about it, I went and
Step right.
you're a smart lady. You know we need women. Just not in the White House. That was funny. Okay. Oh, that was funny. Well, we don't know Brad and me. God, he taught me to be sarcastic. So anyhow, what? Oh, Brad said a lot of things. Look at him. So anyhow, real quickly. So I got my master's at Springfield College, the birthplace of basketball, and then I went to Northern Colorado and got my doctorate in 2 years in kinesiology, and I went back to 4 days, and I was a tenured professor and left. But I was thinking about this because you're talking about Brad as an innovator and that voice activation. I had one of the first voice activation little handheld things. Because I remember Brad at Wilson Learning and voice activation. But probably the nicest compliment I could ever say, if you think about it, is that he called me up about 5 years ago. I have a company called Sports Management Worldwide. This isn't an advertisement, but it's online education, and I'm way out there, and I have students from 140 different countries, and I believe online's the cell phone versus a payphone. I tell my students, you find me a payphone, I'll give you $1. If you find somebody using it, I'll give you $5, because we're in a revolution. We still are in online education. I understand how we still don't think it's the same as a classroom. I'm different, and Brad taught me to be different. But he called me up and asked my advice, Velma, on online education. He had an idea. I'm not sure I can remember the content of it, but to get a call from Brad Lashbrick, your brother, asking me, the young brother that's developed his own company and passionate about education, just like Brad was. I just can't thank not only the people in the room, but recapturing the essence of my relationship with my brother. It's kind of a retro relationship, but I'm just really lucky. And Velma, thanks for putting this together. It's really special. Thank you very much.
Was there someone back at this table who Velma was trying to encourage to tell a story? Oh, it's me. Okay. It's me. I'm this way because there's a cord there. Thanks. I'm Jane Stubblefield, and I worked with Brad at Wilson Learning Corporation. And I had the delightful opportunity to lead the team that created Signature Service. Anybody in here remember Signature Service?
I saw it last week.
Oh my gosh.
It lives.
It lives on. Well, that was one of the most fun times of my life, having Brad on my team. He reported to me for that experience. Does herding cats bring forth any sort of well, that's kind of what it was like trying to manage Brad. And I'm sure that all of you Wilson people remember one of Larry's stories about the snake. Remember his snake story? Well, I'll never forget the day that we were having a meeting. We were still in the design stage, and Brad came in and said, "We're talking about video today. I think we should use the snake." And we all looked at him and went, no, that's not a good idea for this. This stuff has got to sell across the country and hopefully around the world. The snake story? Well, the snake story was about the fact that it's an illusion. You think you're afraid of a snake, so therefore, if somebody says there's a snake in the room, you're going to panic because, oh my gosh, it's going to kill you. So we went through an entire week-long trial where we had to rent a python. We rented a python and they brought it out to the studio at Wilson Learning. And I have a picture of me with this python draped around my neck, went all the way to the floor. And that story was more fun. For those of you who may have taught Signature Service, you can have more fun with that snake story, but I'll remember the look on all of our faces when he came in and said, "I think we should use the snake." many more wonderful memories of Brad. He was the most fun, creative, wild and crazy, compassionate, loving, kind person. And I think we'll all miss him for a very long time. Anybody else? One last jump here. Velma, do you want to go back? Anybody else?
I think Chris should post this up. Yes, you should post this up.
No?
He's feeding his other groups. But he can stop.
Yes or no?
You want Chris to close it out? Come on, Christopher, you can do it. You're not telling stories? You're not a story? Here's your father's son.
I'm closing it out.
All right.
I'm not going to tell a personal anecdote. I think I'm keep this to myself. But thank you very much for coming today. It was great to hear everybody's stories. It was actually, I mean, a lot of these people, I mean, I don't know a lot of you, and a lot of these stories that I never heard. So it was great to hear all of them. Thank you very much for coming to honor this great man, my father, and thank you.
Thank you.